Hey guys, it's Crossroads here. Today I want to talk about Robinhood. That's ticker symbol HOOD. Robinhood is one that I don't do too many videos on, but boy, they dropped an announcement which is massive. I saw it was pretty big at the time. The market was yawning. Of course, now Robinhood is up 8%, but I think there's a lot more there. This announcement, it really does. Not clickbait, changes everything for Robinhood. You guys know me, I don't do clickbait. So let's talk about this. Now, first, what is this? This is the announcement that popped up yesterday. Robinhood extends its predictions market offering through new joint venture and partnership with Susquehanna to operate CFTC license, exchange, and clearinghouse. It's a mouthful. So, in essence, what this is they're partnering with a market maker. That's what Susquehanna largely does. And they're doing this to be able to do predictions markets, but there's also a lot more too. So this is a joint partnership. There's actually an acquisition involved as well, which is really interesting, and it's almost included as a footnote. It's not a footnote type of acquisition. It's really big. So why is this such a big deal? Robinhood, when they had their earnings, they mentioned that as far as October volume for the predictions market alone, they were at a $300 million annual run rate. And so this is actually a pretty good chunk of their income. We can look here using Fiscal AI. We can see their revenue. This is on a last 12-month basis, so not quite annualized. Of course, it's growing quite rapidly as well. But 300 million is not 10% of this, but it's a market that didn't exist at all last year. And if we look at it on a quarterly basis as well, they are accelerating, but there's a little bit of a plateau. Now, they did break past that in their previous earnings, but predictions market is really one of those drivers that's going to help them break out of these harder comps that they're going to be running into. Right now, the way that they're structured with predictions market, they have two partners on the back end, but Kalshi, I would guess, is probably like 98% of the volume. They had a very small predictions market offering before partnering with Kalshi. So the way that the payment structure works with that current partnership is that Kalshi gets a cent and Robinhood gets a cent for every events contract that's traded. As a result, Kalshi at one time, I'm not sure if it's still currently holding this way, but it's still elevated, had 35 to 40% of their volume on their platform actually coming from Robinhood. So Robinhood has been doing an immense amount of volume that if Robinhood was its own exchange, they would actually be number 3, of course, behind Kalshi and Polymarket. And that's for just being in the United States, which is pretty remarkable and incredible, and especially since they're in the early innings. So the question that was asked a couple of times was if Robinhood would end up building their own predictions market rather than just leaving money on the table. So that's in effect what they're doing. Now, we're going to look at mergers and acquisitions and the way that they think about this and what this means as well, because there's a lot more than just predictions market here. But just on the predictions market, let's stay on that for a minute. If they shift over, which they are, from partnering with Kalshi, and this is going to come next year, so it's not immediate and it might take time to roll things over, but Robinhood doesn't mess around with these things. They move rapidly. Then all of a sudden, they can do several things. One, they can say, okay, we're just going to keep that extra penny that we used to have from Kalshi, and overnight, they double their predictions market revenue from 300 million annual run rate to 600 million annualized, which is pretty remarkable, especially because this is a product that's growing. Now, if you look at that, you break it up over the course of this, that's 150 million each quarter. That's very creative and very nice, especially because the rest of their business continues to grow and do quite well despite the volatility, or maybe because of it. So that is a meaningful driver of revenue. Now, they can also just say, you know what, we want to gain more market share. The way that they've talked about this platform a couple of different places is that they really see this as a tool to be able to infuse their flywheel and bring more customers to the Robinhood platform, which of course benefits all the different offerings that they are delivering there on this platform. So it could be that they say, okay, well, we'll just have a high quality product that we undercut everybody else because we're vertically integrated. We can do that. So be it. They may go that route as well. It's probably some combination of both. But specifically, as far as what they were talking about with Devin Ryan, he was an analyst, really good analyst for Citizens. He had this great interview with their future CFO. So Shiv just shared a lot of things. What's interesting is he asked questions on mergers and acquisitions, which we're actually going to look at that bit of an interview. but this was on the predictions market. And they by the way, they mentioned vertically integrated in it. Shiv also mentioned and said, oftentimes Robinhood partners first and then will vertically integrate as well. And so all the writing was on the wall right here. And of course, not too many people paid attention to this video. He also mentioned that margins was something that they were still looking at and figuring out. Pricing is and it could be dynamic, but they could do a lot of different things. And this gives them more optionality on that as well. So either way that you look at it, this is accretive. Now, beyond simply the predictions market, there is a lot more here. So one thing is this sentence right here. The independent joint venture will serve future commissions merchant FCM platforms, see that S, with futures and derivative products, including predictions markets. That S is not a typo. That is very intentional. The acquisition that they have, and we'll look at this next in just a moment, it is an institutional offering and product. It is a platform. And so they're using this with Susquehanna to evolve it and create the future commissions merchant, which is an offering not just for Robinhood to benefit from, and we already talked about that massive revenue benefit or the savings that they can do, but also so that they can offer this to others. Now, what's really interesting is we had hints of this as well with a recent fireside chat. So we'll go over here to Fiscal AI and the Wolf Wealth Symposium. Stephen Chubak, that's Quirk. So he ended up, Stephen Quirk, rather. I was like, that's not right. Yeah, Q, who is one of the higher ups at Robinhood. He's been there a while. He's been in the markets for a long, long time. He mentioned something really interesting. And let's see, it's CME. So this is a question that the interview asked him, and they said, how do you protect the competitive moat, basically, of the predictions platform? They talked a lot about that. And what actions are you taking to create higher barriers? And so he said, I don't know that we've really thought about it from a barrier standpoint. We're more opportunistic. Like we have 26 million people, and a small percentage are using it. That's pretty if you look at what the hardest component is for anybody in this space or ancillary is. It's to get the customer. They spend a lot of money to get the customer. We already have the customer. That makes it a lot easier. I would say that there's going to be benefits. Now you have a 225-year-old institution over here that's getting in. CME, a 150-year-old institution that's getting in. They're knocking on our door. They want our flow over there. That's beneficial. I think that lends well for the industry at large. That's really interesting. Now, there's a lot to that, but to the one thing as it relates to this announcement, which is really interesting, is since this is platforms, it's a platform that is for other players like CME. They apparently were approaching Robinhood before this deal was even announced, saying, hey, we want your flow. We want to know how you're doing this, how you're driving this predictions market. And Robinhood, with this partnership, basically allows them to have other partnerships, which will be their second institutional offering. Of course, the other one also came through here recently, just this year, Bitstamp specifically. So they do a lot of institutional volume there. So beyond this, there are even more benefits, beyond revenue benefits, beyond having another institutional facing product, which, by the way, the reason why that's a really big deal is Vlad back in the spring said right that at that time they had zero money from institutions. It was just from, or essentially zero. For us retail folks, that's where most of the revenue was actually coming from. And he mentioned a lot of other brokerages and platforms. And he said, usually you see about a 50-50 split, and that they were going to build out institutional products. So imagine that, over the years, it's going to take some time to build out these offerings and fill those up. But there is a time for sure when Robinhood will be approaching that, if not surpassing that as well. Look at where the revenue is, and you can see where they're going in the future. Now, beyond that, this is futures and derivatives exchange and clearinghouse. Right now, they do a lot of their derivatives and their futures through CBOE, CBO. Some people pronounce it that way. This allows them to do more deeply vertical integration for their offerings, like options, for instance. And so if we look at the actual company that they are acquiring, it's MIAX Derivatives Exchange. And so they offer a lot of different products. They actually just recently became a publicly traded company. And so we can actually see the size of this, even though the monetary amount wasn't really mentioned there in the article, that it is, as far as a market cap, a 3.64 billion market cap. Now they're holding onto a 10% equity stake. And again, this is a joint venture. So we don't know that Robinhood is spending that. They do have that in terms of cash, but it could be that they have a different amount of ownership and it's a joint venture. Don't know exactly how that works, but I'm sure that we'll find out some more details later. Now, what's interesting in this is since they are publicly traded, is we can actually see their financials. So let's look at operating revenues and let's also look at net here. And if, by the way, one of the things I like about this is if I'm not seeing it, and I'm sure I just skip past it, we can just do right here, net income right there, boom. All right. And then let's look at it at a quarterly basis because that'll actually help us more. And so this is what we have with MIAX. So you can see, by the way, this is on an annual basis. This is the last 12 months. It's actually negative. The reason why it is actually negative, two things. There's costs related to the IPO filing. In addition to that, they also retired some debt early as well. So it was a one-off type of event. We can look at that at a quarterly basis and also see that we can see that it's an aberration in terms of usually posting negative numbers. They usually do not. So yeah, anyway, they are looking pretty good and attractive. Revenue is growing rapidly. It's a product that benefits Robinhood because they're more deeply vertically integrated, saving them quite a bit of revenue on the other side, which allows them to be even more competitive than they are if they choose to go that direction. They oftentimes do. And it gives them a platform also to offer to other institutions as well, which is already growing on its own. And yeah, this is, again, Shiv. He's going to be the future CFO here for Robinhood once Jason officially retires. This is his thoughts on mergers and acquisitions, and it kind of signals why they went this direction.
And the way we think about M&A is kind of, there's three criteria it needs to pass: tech, talent, speed to market. So it needs to make sure it's good tech that we're proud of. It needs to have a team that we like. So if you look at the acquisitions we've done today, those leaders have begun to become the GMs. We don't just hire them to redo it. And then third, speed to market. It's a land rush. We have so much to do. And so that's a little bit the M&A philosophy. And then lastly, a shareholder return, making sure that we're returning capital to shareholders in a timely and efficient manner. And so the way we started is we go through our annual planning process and we said, what is everything that we would like to build over the next 1, 3, 5 years, where we can realistically do it within our financial profile, but also the mind share of the teams between the GMs and the leadership team to make sure we're not overextending ourselves. We then say, whatever we're not going to do in the next 12 to 18 months, let's give that to M&A. The tail should not be wagging the dog. Anything we're looking at in M&A is a strategic priority. It's just something that we either didn't have the ability to build at this time, or it's something where we thought there was a better capabilities outside. So it's institutional. Both of our recent M&A deals, whether it's Trade PMR or Bitstamp, have been working with institutional clients where we think M&A is a better way to do that. And then lastly, any excess capital that we have, we should be returning it to shareholders, as long as we're above the kind of the excess capital and liquidity that we need, which we've said publicly we have billions of excess.
So there you have it. They were looking at this and saying, okay, over the next 12 to 18 months, what are we building and where do we need help as far as M&A? Of course, to help with speed to the market, or they're just busy with other things and focus on building other things internally. So that's why they launched this acquisition. He also signaled with Trade PMR and Bitstamp that institutional facing appeal, that mergers and acquisitions tend to be a more beneficial thing when that is at least part of your clientele. So yeah, this is going to be really something to keep an eye on as it continues to evolve. We'll see if there's actually formal announcements. Oftentimes there's not, as far as future clients like perhaps CME onboarding onto this platform that they're building. But yeah, this is a really big deal where it's immediately accretive once they launch it internally. And of course, there's some upside as well as far as institutions. So Robinhood continues to evolve and iterate, and this is just one area where they're proving that out. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing. Quick note as well, I am sponsored by Physical AI, so there's a link in the description. I use some of the product here in this video. Right now, they do have a Black Friday event and offering, and so you can actually save yourself 30% for a limited time for the first year if you use a link in my description. Thank you as always for watching, commenting, and subscribing. Happy Thanksgiving. Take care.